So let me ask the panel, like, what would be your idea of how can you create an analogy to simplify this, like dumb it down to a second grade level for the jury to understand what it needs to be, what they need to say in closing for the jury to go, oh, so that's what that means, and render a decision in favor of Johnny Depp.
Why?
It's a very complicated question.
Who wants to go first? I have an answer, but if someone else wants to go first, they're welcome to it.
Burn the witch.
Drown her.
And then have sex with her dead corpse.
And then drown her. And throw her body in the trunk of a Honda.
No, my thought was like, it's not even that. Like, so Ben Chu has demonstrated this really cool combination of legal intellect, strategy, and then the ability to relate to the average person. You don't really see in a lot of lawyers. Like you watch him relate to the people in the gallery, the people when he's walking in. He has the ability to communicate on several levels. So I think about him making an argument at closing, and I can think of that sticking. Then I look at Elaine Bredehoff, and where you're talking about someone who is told that a question is leading and has the opportunity to rephrase that question and try to make it not leading, can't effing do it. Like, imagine her trying to explain something complex when she can't understand that what, if anything, does not make a leading question a not leading question.
Your Honor, it does cure it. It does cure it.
In some circumstances, it actually
I'm trying here.
I'm just going to say, in some circumstances, not always, but in some circumstances.
You're right. It can if it creates sufficient ambiguity in the answer.
Correct.
And but your
what if
opposition.
anything did you do on Tuesday? Not what if any, vehicles with license plate T7J.
Correct.
427.
Where you're driving.
I loved. What, if anything, did you report to your doctor about the abuse you sustained at the hands of Johnny Depp on March 15th? Like, well, come on, lady, that doesn't work.
The other one I loved was just, what if anything do you, what if any bruising did you sustain? And she's got the circles, and she's still drawing them as she's asking the what if any question. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I wish they would have asked the judge to order her to take those down at that point, but it'd probably just draw too much attention to it. I think that to answer your question, DUI guy, that what Ben Chu or whoever's delivering closing needs to do for this is do kind of what Rob is saying and really simplify it down to an average person. I think that's what makes the people on LawTube kind of unique amongst lawyers, and why we're able to do these shows to people talking about really oftentimes boring subjects, but get people to watch, is that we can say, okay, so you've heard both sides of this case. You've heard Johnny Depp talk about his life, accept the fact that he's had issues with drug and alcohol problems throughout his entire life. You've heard tons of testimony about Johnny Depp's drug and alcohol problems. What you haven't heard at all is how specifically those drug and alcohol problems transform him into an abuser. And you haven't heard that because that's not what happens. In fact, you've heard testimony from all sorts of people in his life that you can't even tell the difference between Johnny Depp, who's intoxicated, and Johnny Depp, who is sober, that he is largely the same person. And when they run into issues, when you hear about any sort of issues, it's about maybe getting back to them or communicating about really sensitive topics. But you've never heard that Johnny Depp somehow becomes abusive by the nature of his substance use. With that said, Amber Heard has not put into evidence any credible testimony or pictures or videos or accounts that she has ever been hit by Johnny Depp. In fact, everyone who came up and testified here, every single person testified that they did not see Johnny Depp hit Amber Heard. So what you've got to determine as a jury to find defamation, because that's what this is about. This is about defamation. And it's defamation within these three statements. You guys have to determine whether these three statements, as you read them, because you're reasonable people, and this is a reasonable person standard, as you read these statements, does this amount to Amber Heard lying about Johnny Depp? Does that cause him damage? And does that damage knowingly, and are those statements knowing lies? Now, here's how you determine those things. Did Amber Heard make the statements? Well, you've heard from Miss Heard herself that she wrote the statements in the article. You've heard from Miss Heard herself that she retweeted the headline of the article, that she knew that headline was in there, and that she added stuff to that tweet, that she published that article. She admitted that the article is about Johnny Depp. So there's no ambiguity here. You know that Miss Heard made these statements about Johnny Depp. So you have to determine, based on all the testimony you've seen, if these statements are true. So what do they say? They say that Amber Heard stood up against domestic violence as a victim of domestic abuse and sexual assault. Based on the testimony you've seen and the credibility you give to each witness, you have to determine if she actually is a victim of domestic violence. You have to determine whether or not someone who admittedly participates, and even instigates violence. You've heard audio, you've heard testimony that Amber Heard is often the instigator of violence. You have never heard testimony that Johnny Depp has instigated violence. So you have to determine whether that instigation of violence can even allow her to be a victim of what you perceive to be domestic assault, because you are the reasonable person, and that's the standard here. If you determine that she is not a victim of domestic assault or of domestic violence, whatever the specific phrase is, if you determine that, then you next have to determine if she knowingly lied about that status. And if she's not actually a victim of domestic violence, but went and published statements with the intent to harm Johnny Depp, that she's a victim of domestic violence, I think we can infer that she knows it's not true. But that's up to you, jury. That's what you have to decide today. So I think that's how you nail that issue on close.
Well said.
I'm going to go with what he said.
Yeah. Cheers. Yeah.
And then, of course, you pad it out with a bunch of references to evidence, but
of course, but that's the nutshell of it, man. If they can convey it to the jury in that way, I may change my mind. I guess we'll have to hear closings first, because it is not an easy concept to understand, and you just made it very digestible, Nick. So pour out an odd bag of bow, more of the frog. Spirits flow as the ones who get unemployed. So pour out a glass for the team, post on Twitter as we hear